Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is our group learning program where each Sunday and Wednesday I get together with students and helping them to understand the path to enlightenment, how to train your mind to get to the point where the mind is experiencing enlightenment. Enlightenment is where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind no longer experiences any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All those feelings and others are eliminated through training of the mind. The teachings of the Buddha aren't about a bunch of beliefs of things that you believe. Instead, you're learning, examining, and investigating his teachings. Then you're reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or false. And then you're practicing his teachings, integrating certain aspects of his teachings into your life so that you can train your mind and transform your mind. Oftentimes people think that these discontent feelings are caused by other people. You might think that other people are making you angry or other people are annoying you or frustrating you. But you can see through the teachings of the Buddha that this isn't actually true. Your mind is actually causing these feelings itself. And that's the reason why you can eliminate them. If it was other people that was causing these feelings, you wouldn't actually be able to eliminate them. So we just restarted this group learning program a few weeks ago. And I'm in a three-part series, not three-part, but three-part series where I'm teaching the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is a core central teaching of the Buddha. And here at the beginning of this program, we're going in depth into each individual section. Today, we're going to be describing the moral conduct section where you're learning about the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, about how your speech, your actions, and your livelihood can cause harm to others. And if you're causing harm to others, this harm will come back to you. But if you learn about the teachings of the Buddha, how to make wise decisions around your moral conduct, you can get to the point where you're not causing harm to others. Therefore, harm isn't going to be coming back to you in terms of your relationships and the way that you interact with people. You'll notice that you can get to a point where all your relationships are harmonious, both personally and professionally. So the way that we start our classes is we start with meditation to be able to help you guys do a little bit of training of the mind. Meditation is a practice that you would need to build up as part of your life practice. You would need to be meditating on your own consistently over the course of your life in order to gradually make your way to enlightenment. But you need much more than meditation. You wouldn't be able to meditate your way to enlightenment. So that's why after the meditation, I'm going to provide you a talk on this moral conduct section of the Eightfold Path so that you'll understand this aspect of the teachings of the Buddha. So again, welcome to everyone. Nice to see all of you guys here. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I start this is I do some chanting to ease us into the meditation. You can see these chants on a laminated sheet over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself and get a sheet there because you're welcome to chant along if you'd like. I'm going to be chanting, and those of you guys online, you can find these as well. You can go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, click on free books, and then scroll down towards the bottom and you'll see this daily chanting sheet. Again, it's buddhadailywisdom.com, and you'll be able to see it there. And you should be able to see this website in the comment section of wherever you're watching this live. So these chants, they're in the Pali language. This is the historical language of the teachings of the Buddha, that they were captured and we study them in the Pali language, but they've been translated into English and other things like this. Thai, Vietnamese, other cultures and languages have been translated from the Pali into English. So everything that I teach is in the English language. But these chants are something that the Buddha used during his life, not these specific chants, but chanting in general. He used it as a way to help his students commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally because everything that he taught was oral. They didn't have the ability to write things down during his lifetime because the technology didn't exist in that part of the world 2,500 years ago. So every 2 weeks, they would come together and they would recite his teachings orally as a way to be able to commit them to memory. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. That's not the way that the Buddha used chanting during his lifetime. So there's nothing mystical or magical here. Today, we use it in order to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. But during his lifetime, it was purely as a learning device. He didn't teach any rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. So if you see those things attributed to the Buddha's teachings, you can be assured that the Buddha Buddha didn't teach those things, because he's teaching you to cultivate wisdom and train your mind and transform your mind. And rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship don't do that for you. It doesn't allow you to cultivate wisdom. If you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha actually created these chants himself, because it would take a whole lot of ego and arrogance to go around and say, here, chant these things to me out of respect for me, right? This is not what an enlightened being is going to be doing. This isn't how a Buddha functions. A Buddha sees themselves as being equal to everybody, that everybody's the same. So I suspect that these chants actually came from his students, probably during his life or after his death. They probably created these, because if you learn from a teacher how to move from that anger and sadness and frustration and all those other discontent feelings to this peaceful and joyful mental state that is enlightenment, and this is a permanent mental state, that by the time you get to that mental state, your mind can never experience anger again. It's impossible. And if this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that person too. So during his life and after his death, even now, people have an enormous amount of respect for the Buddha for what he did during his lifetime to be able to help us to understand these teachings and get to a point where you can be experiencing the peace and joy that is the enlightened mental state. So that's where I suspect these came from, probably his students, either during his life or after his death. So after chanting, you're going to hear me come in with some guidance where I'll be guiding all of you in the meditation. So I'll be kind of instructing you and kind of guiding you along the way. But then there's going to be a period of time where I'm just quiet and I'm not talking at all. It'll just be quiet here in the space. I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds, because you can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. It's just not possible, because the whole world is full of impermanence where things are constantly changing. If your mind craves permanent quietness during meditation, when you hear that car go by or the bird chirping or the dog barking, you'll cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. It's not the car, it's not the dog, it's not the bird. It's the mind craving permanence and wanting things to be a certain way permanently, when this isn't possible, because you live in an impermanent world. Things are constantly changing. So during that period of time where it's quiet, you'll probably hear occasional sounds, but if you just understand that those sounds are impermanent, they're going to arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away, you can reside peaceful and joyful, because you see the world is functioning exactly the way the Buddha described, that it is impermanent. After that period of time where it's quiet and we've been meditating, then I'm going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start today's class. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's essentially 4 positions that the Buddha taught. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you might use these different positions at different times in order to help you during your journey to enlightenment. And I teach these at different times during the various courses and retreats that I share. But since a lot of people are just learning in the seated position, I will share with you some guidance on the seated position in order to help you find something that maybe is even more comfortable than where you already are. But what I share with you are just suggestions. There's no, fixed way that everybody has to sit, because all of us have different bodies and we're going to find different things to be comfortable. That's part of impermanence, that there's not just one fixed way to sit during meditation. So I'll share a few ideas with you for you to consider. And if something like this helps you, wonderful, use it. If you're sitting in a way that's completely opposite of what I describe, but that's comfortable for you, wonderful, use that. These are just suggestions for you to consider. So you could sit on the floor, you could sit in a chair. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair or anything like this, you can sit however you're comfortable. If you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This tends to soften your seat. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might decide to do that just lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Sometimes people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So this might be an option for you to consider as well. And then in terms of your hands and arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here too. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people just rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can do whatever is comfortable for you. It's really up to you. And then for anybody who's in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair, it's the same thing. You can sit with your feet flat on the floor perhaps, or crossed at the ankles. Those are options that people tend to use, but you can see me sitting in a chair with my legs crossed, so that's an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you're comfortable. It's helpful if your upper body is erect with your sternum up and your shoulders back. It'll help to keep your mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you would like the mind to be attentive and alert during the training. So having the sternum up and the shoulders back will help the mind to stay attentive and alert during the meditation. It also makes it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. You guys are all welcome to join in, and then I'll come back in with some guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang sammuno Sakatoro kawitu Anupero purisa Dhamma sati satatawa manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสานามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to everyone here at the temple. Welcome to everyone online as well. Nice to see everyone this morning. As I shared, I'm just restarting this group learning program where each Sunday I go chapter by chapter in this book. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. You can actually get this for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it yourself. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. This is a foundational text. It's going to help you to understand the path to enlightenment, how to develop this life practice. And then we have other books that are part of this book series, volumes 2 through 13. They'll kind of fill in that framework for you, where this book kind of creates like a nice framework for you. All the others kind of fill that in. And we have various programs and courses and retreats that are all available to you at no cost to be able to gradually learn. Whether you're here at the temple or you would like to join us online through our live streams, or even if you can't attend live, there's recordings to be able to gradually help you to be able to develop this practice and train the mind to get closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. Here at the beginning of the program, what I do is I kind of do like an overview of what the path to enlightenment is for the first kind of 5 weeks of the program. And we're actually going to go in depth to a core central teaching of the Buddha. It's called the Eightfold Path. I'm teaching this 3-part series on the Eightfold Path, going into each individual section of wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. And this is at the very beginning of the program, helps a student to understand what the path to enlightenment is. And we're going through it in detail. And as part of this program, we're going to go through it again later when we get to chapter 4 and 5 as well. But here at the beginning, I like to make sure that students have a very good understanding of what the path to enlightenment is. And you normally need to learn this particular teaching multiple times. You can't just learn one of the teachings of the Buddha and just instantly implement it. That's not the way it works. You're going to need gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It's more than meditation that you need in order to get to enlightenment. Sometimes people think that you can just meditate your way to enlightenment. They think that the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated and instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. If you learn through his teachings, you can see that he talks about gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. He says very clearly that he didn't attain enlightenment all at one time. It was through this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And you know, every part of your life has been that way, whether it's learning how to read, write, or speak a certain language or some job or occupation. It's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. That's how you make improvements in your day-to-day life. And that's what the path to enlightenment is becoming a better and better human being, cultivating wholesomeness in your mind. And you need wisdom to be able to do that. So that's why this core central teaching of the Buddha, the Eightfold Path, it starts with this wisdom section. And I taught this last week where we discussed right view and right intention. With right view, you're learning the Four Noble Truths. These are 4 simple statements that you can understand what is the problem in your mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. I first taught students the 3 universal truths of impermanence, discontentedness, and the universal truth of non-self. And for those of you guys that learned that, you remember that from last week. And if you weren't here or you didn't attend our classes, it's okay because everything's recorded. You can easily go back and see that class because it's really important to know what right view is, because that's the foundation for everything else that you learn with the teachings of the Buddha. If you didn't understand right view, which is the Four Noble Truths, you wouldn't understand anything that the Buddha has to share with you. So just as a little bit of a summary for those of you guys that weren't here, the first noble truth, the Buddha is explaining that the problem that each individual person is experiencing in the unenlightened state is that your mind is discontent. You're experiencing conditioned feelings. You get happy and excited. You get pleasant feelings. You get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. And then you get neither painful nor pleasant feelings like shyness or where you're displeased. You have dissatisfaction in the mind. Essentially, what the mind's doing is it's going up and down and up and down. It's having conditioned feelings that based on some condition, you will get happy or excited. Maybe if it's sunny outside, you'll get so happy and so excited. Or if your bank account balance is up here, you'll get so happy and so excited. Or if your mom is coming to visit you because maybe you got a new apartment or a new house or a new car and your mom would like to come visit you and see this new thing that you got. Maybe you're so excited and so happy based on this condition, right? So the mind is forming conditioned feelings. Based on some condition, you will now be happy, excited, elated, thrilled, and euphoria. Well, the problem with that is it's temporary. Those feelings arise, they change, and they fade away. And you can only be happy when that thing is occurring. So that means your happiness shrinks, because the second noble truth is explaining to you that the cause of these discontent feelings is craving, desire, attachment, the mind longing, yearning, wanting, and expecting things to be a certain way. If the mind gets what it wants and what it expects, then it gets happy or excited. But if you don't get what you want, then the mind's angry or sad or frustrated. The mind is craving permanence. So if your bank account balance is up here and you're really happy, well, when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. The only thing that's happened is change, and you live in a world full of change. Everything around you is impermanent. So if you can only be happy when your bank account balance is here, then that means when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. Or if you can be happy when it's sunny outside, that means when it's anything other than sunny, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. You can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that it's not other people. Like if mom says, hey, I'm going to come visit you on Friday. I heard you got that new condo or that new apartment, that new flat. It's like, wow, you get so excited. But then she calls you on Thursday and says, hey, I've had a change of plans. I can't come. Well, now you might be frustrated or agitated. It's not mom that's causing that. It's the mind craving permanence. It's wanting this thing to occur, which is mom to come visit you. But mom's life is impermanent. She's impermanent in your life. She's not going to be able to come and do every single thing you want her to do. But if your mind craves that permanence, then when you're not getting what you want, you'll be angry or frustrated or sad. You can see this if you've had a relationship where you've been together with a partner. Maybe when you guys first got together with that boyfriend or girlfriend, you were so happy and excited. You guys were having great conversations. You were going to the park. You're going to the movies, to dinner. Maybe you were having intimate contact like sex and things like this. Maybe you were so happy and excited during that period of time when you guys first got together. But then over time, you had all these expectations of things that you wanted this person to do. And they couldn't meet those expectations permanently. And they might have had expectations of you, wanting you to do things a certain way. And maybe you guys broke up. You got so angry and frustrated. And now you might have even been more angry and even more frustrated. Maybe you were starting to feel lonely or bored, or you might start missing this person. This isn't the love that's causing that. This is the mind craving permanence and holding on, wanting this relationship to be permanent, when in reality, this relationship is impermanent. It's constantly changing. You live in a world full of impermanence, but the mind doesn't understand that wisdom, that the world is full of impermanence, so it craves permanence and wanting things to be a certain way. Or if you had a brand new car, for example, and you parked this car at a store and you went out inside the store and you came out and you saw a scratch on your car, you might be angry or frustrated because of that. It's not the person who scratched your car, and it's not the scratch itself that's causing that. What's causing the anger and frustration is the mind's craving this car to be permanently beautiful. And this car can't be permanently beautiful. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. This car is impermanent. But as long as you crave for it to be permanent, you're longing, yearning for it to be permanent, then the mind will be experiencing painful feelings whenever you see this impermanence, whenever you see this change. But you can transcend all of that. That's what the third noble truth is helping you to be able to understand. The first noble truth is explaining the problem is the discontentedness, the mind going up and down. The cause of that problem is the craving, the desire, the longing, the yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. You can only be happy when you get it your way. But then when the mind's not getting what it wants, it gets those painful feelings. Well, the third noble truth is explaining that you can eliminate this through eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If you eliminate the cause of the mind going up and down, then the mind won't go up and down anymore. You can be peaceful and joyful your entire life. It'll be physically impossible for you to experience anger and frustration by the time you eliminate this longing, yearning, this chasing after the objects of your affection. And then the fourth noble truth explains the way to do that is the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the complete perfect plan that's going to help you to be able to completely transform the mind. So these four noble truths are what's going to help you establish right view, where you understand the problem is discontentedness. The cause of that problem is craving, desire, attachment, because the mind wants everything to be permanent, when in reality you live in an impermanent world. Then the elimination of this problem of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment, that longing, that yearning, that forming your inner feelings based on something. And then the way to accomplish that is the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the complete perfect plan that's going to help you to accomplish that. So I taught that last week, and I went through it in detail, spending a good 45 minutes or an hour just on that one factor. Then we talked about right intention, where we use the words of the Buddha, which as I teach, I always use the words of the Buddha, because that's how you're going to know what he actually taught and what he didn't teach. This isn't very typical. You would think that it'd be common that everybody would use the words of the Buddha, but it's very rare to see someone teach with the original words of the Buddha. But you're not going to be able to experience enlightenment unless you're actually learning with the original words of the Buddha. So this is what he taught on right intention, explaining that you need to have the intention or the thinking or the thought of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. These are three aspects of the mind that you need to cultivate. The renunciation is the willingness to let go and give up your false ideas, your false beliefs, your false opinions, and your unwholesomeness. Because if you're experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, there's certain false beliefs and opinions, then certain false views that you have in your mind. Otherwise, you wouldn't be experiencing those things. That's a lack of wisdom. That's showing you that you're struggling struggling and having difficulties in the world because there's certain things about the world that you don't understand. That's why the mind experiences stress and anxiety. Oftentimes, the mind thinks it's other people that are causing these feelings, but if you see the Four Noble Truths, you can see and independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. You can look at your own situations where you've wanted and longed and yearned for something. If you get it, you're happy, and if you don't get it, you're angry or frustrated. So you can see it's not other people that are causing these discontent feelings. It's your own mind, because the mind doesn't have a certain amount of wisdom and it hasn't been trained and cultivated, and it doesn't have discipline and control. So this intention of renunciation, you need to be able to be willing to let go and give up the mind's unwholesomeness and the mind's false beliefs, views, and opinions. One of the first false beliefs, views, and opinions that the mind needs to be willing to let go of is the belief that other people are causing you to be angry. If you walk around with this belief, you will never get to enlightenment, because you'll constantly think it's other people causing you to be frustrated and angry, and you'll keep trying to change them. What the mind will tend to do when you experience anger and you don't understand this wisdom of the Buddha is you will tend to push people away out of your life. This is called aversion. You might have pushed family members or friends out of your life, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem, because when you push people out of your life, you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get annoyed. If they were the true cause of the problem, when you push them away, you wouldn't experience anger and frustration any longer. Or you might have been bitter and harsh and hostile through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear that being into doing things your way, because the mind's trying to get those cravings fulfilled. Or the third thing you'll do when you don't understand the Four Noble Truths is you might put your expectations on people and try to control them and force them to do things your way, kind of pressuring them to do things your way. And as long as you're doing this, you can't live harmoniously with all people, because you're pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and putting your expectations on people. Because it's only a matter of time before you encounter interacting with someone who's doing things differently than you, because that's impermanence. But with the mind's ego, the mind thinks my way is the right way and everybody else's way is the wrong way. And now I've got to convince everybody to do things my way, and that's how I'm going to get to happiness. But that doesn't work, because you're never going to be able to train 8 billion people to do things your way. But you can train your mind to do things a certain way. And one of the things you need to be able to do is be willing to let go of your false beliefs, opinions, and views, and the unwholesomeness that the mind has. So one of the first false beliefs that you need to let go of is that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated, because otherwise you'll just keep pushing them away, be bitter, harsh, and hostile with them, or putting your expectations on them. And this isn't actually going to work. Then I taught the intention of non-ill will, which is loving kindness or goodwill, having goodwill towards all beings, eliminating any kind of anger, hatred, and all those lesser versions like frustration and agitation or annoyance. You need to have the intention or the thinking or the thought that you're having this active goodwill towards all beings, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is what's going to help you to eliminate the animosity and the bitterness and the resentment that you have towards other people, because that's just harming your own mind. Sometimes we hold on to a grudge because the unenlightened mind thinks I'm going to get back at that person. If I hold on to my anger and my irritability, my animosity, I'm getting back at that person. But that's like holding on to a hot coal and trying to burn somebody else. The only person being burned is yourself. So by you holding on to that resentment and hostility in your mind, it's just harming you. So the Buddha is teaching you to have this intention of non-ill will, or this ability to have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And then there's this harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Because anytime you're causing harm to others, harm is just going to come back to you. So the Buddha teaches you not to cause harm. So once you understand the Four Noble Truths in right intention, right speech, once you understand right view, which is the Four Noble Truths, and you understand right intention, which is the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness, this forms the wisdom of this Eightfold Path. This forms the foundation, because you understand that, hey, all these feelings that I'm experiencing are coming from my own mind. It's coming from these cravings, desires, attachments. It's not other people that are causing you to experience any particular feelings. So you need to know that as a foundational traditional teaching, and you need to independently verify it. You can't believe what I'm sharing with you or what the Buddha shares. You need to see it in your own life. And if you have difficulties doing that, you can let me know and I will help you. And then once you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings and you can actually eliminate them, that's the beauty in this, is that if you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, then you can also see that you can actually eliminate them because your own mind is causing it. Then you form the other section of the wisdom part of the Eightfold Path by understanding this right intention or this right thinking or this right thought that you need to cultivate within the mind. The intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. And now you build upon that with your moral conduct, because oftentimes when we don't know right view and right intention, we will feel justified in our harshness and our bitterness. When you're angry and frustrated and you're being resentful through your intentions, your speech, and your actions towards your parents or your coworkers, your siblings, or your friends, you might feel they deserve it, right? But this isn't true. They're not the ones who are causing you to be angry or frustrated. Now, they might be doing something that is unwise, but that doesn't say that they're causing you to be angry or frustrated. It's your own mind that's doing that. So the Buddha helps you to be able to understand this moral conduct, which is built upon this wisdom section, because the wisdom that your own mind is causing these feelings is very important. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding what's causing these feelings, so that now you can build upon that and improve your speech, your actions, and your livelihood. Because as long as you're causing harm through your moral conduct, that harm is going to come back to you. You can look at your relationships where you're bitter and harsh and hostile. You'll see that those people are bitter, harsh, and hostile right back to you. So sometimes we think the way to transform our relationships is to change other people. I know I did this with my mom for a long time. I was really resentful growing up, and I just wanted to change mom so badly, and she wouldn't change. So finally, when I started to understand these teachings, I started transforming my mind, and that's when our relationship really transformed. Because as I became more and more peaceful, more and more joyful, mom could see she's the one who was being angry and bitter and harsh, and then she needed to work on her mind because her son wasn't being angry and bitter with her any longer. So sometimes what we do is we sit back and we want other people to change. And we think that's the way that our relationships are going to get better. But you can't change your relationships that way. You need to first work on your own mind. So once you understand this wisdom section, the Buddha then moves you into this moral conduct section to be able to understand wise conduct so that you're not causing harm to others. And whenever you're learning moral conduct from the Buddha, it's important to understand that what he's teaching you is something called the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result. You might have heard this referred to as karma. This is a different language. It's the Sanskrit language. In the original teachings of the Buddha, which are in Pali, the word karma is being used. If this translated to just one English word, I would just use that because it'd be easier for everyone, but it doesn't. So I still need to use this Pali word. But it's pointing to this natural law of cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. There's no being or entity that's overseeing this natural law and dishing out punishments and rewards. It's literally a sequencing of events that when you make decisions wisely, you will experience wholesome karma, or wholesome results. If you make decisions unwisely, you will experience unwholesome karma, or unwholesome results. And when you lack wisdom of this natural law, you will tend to make unwise decisions just without even realizing it. Just like when we were growing up as a child and we didn't understand the natural law of gravity, we made a lot of unwise decisions. That's why we fell down. We hit our head. We bumped our elbows. We broke our toys. We had all kinds of trouble, right? We were crying. We were upset. We didn't understand this world that we lived in. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law of gravity. We never believed in the natural law of gravity. We saw the truth for ourselves. We know that it exists, right? We can see the truth. It's right there. Right? So we don't believe these natural laws. We cultivate wisdom about them. And then when we cultivate wisdom about the natural laws, we make wiser decisions and we navigate the world more peacefully. That's why we can climb ladders, we can ride bicycles, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we fully awoke to the wisdom of this natural law of gravity. Well, there's other natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. Just like the natural law of gravity, it was affecting us whether we were aware of it or not. So what you're doing on this path is you're gaining this wisdom of the natural law of gamma. This is one of the main natural laws that you're learning about, this cause and effect, or this action and result. That's what it means to awaken or be awake, that you're able to see this natural law very clearly, and now you navigate the world with wise decisions based on this natural law. And as you're making more and more wise decisions around your moral conduct, you're going to see more and more wholesomeness coming back to you, because you're no longer putting out the unwise decisions based in this natural law. So you'll see only wholesome results coming back to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through this with the words of the Buddha to be able to help you understand this moral conduct that he taught around right speech, right action, and right livelihood. But it's important not to see it as rules or commandments or anything like that. He's helping you to understand this natural law, because he's going to show you certain conduct that you have that's based in craving, desire, attachment. Because remember, back here with Right View in the Four Noble Truths, he's teaching you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, that longing, yearning. And there's certain moral conduct that you have that's based in that craving, that desire, that longing, yearning. And whenever you base your moral conduct in craving, anger, or what we call ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality, this is going to produce unwholesome results for you, or unwholesome karma. So I'm going to be teaching you each step here, and I'm going to be using the words of the Buddha, and I'm going to be pausing to allow you guys to ask any and all questions that you like as we go through our class today. If you would like to ask questions, we have microphones here in the middle of the room in the white bowl. All you need to do is get a microphone, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on, and you can just hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can just keep these with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share it with them. And then when you're not using it, if you could just turn it off so we don't get feedback through the speakers, that would be really helpful as well. And for anybody who's online, if you would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then you can ask any and all questions that you like. So let's talk about this cause and effect, or action and result, these natural law, because it's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. And the more you know about this natural law, you can function wisely through your moral conduct, and you're going to see your relationships really improve. You're going to get to the point where all your relationships are harmonious. But it's going to take multiple months and years for you to gradually build up your practice to that point. That's the gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So here's the words of the Buddha on right speech. He's helping you to be able to see the natural law. He's saying, in what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech. So this is where you're learning how to speak in a way that is harmless. That whenever you're lying, we've all done that, right? When we were growing up as kids, we all lied. There was some craving. There was something we wanted. And if we told the truth, we weren't going to get what we wanted. So we lied instead. Right? That's what we chose to do because of our lack of wisdom. But eventually people found out those lies. They discovered those lies, and they considered us to be untrustworthy, undependable, unreliable. And now our relationships struggled. Whether it's our personal or professional relationships, if we're regularly lying, it's going to damage our relationships because people aren't going to be able to trust us. And now in our professional career, we're not going to be able to have the advancement that we need because our boss, our coworkers, they can't trust what we're doing. And also, if you've done a lot of lying, you know that your mind was kind of obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another. It was really challenging to keep all your lies straight. So how could you ever get to peace and joy if we were lying? So that's why the Buddha teaches that it's wise to eliminate lying so that you just speak the truth. And now your mind can be at ease because you're always speaking the truth. You don't have to figure out what you said from one person to the next to the next. You can just speak the truth and people will consider you to be reliable and dependable, and you'll have more satisfying and fulfilling relationships. He teaches to eliminate slander, or we might refer to this as gossip. This is where someone's trying to damage another person's reputation. If we did that, it's causing harm to this individual. And now this person's going to want to cause harm to us. At the height of this, you can be murdered for this. That's the cause and effect. right? That's the natural law of karma. If you go out in the world and you damage people's reputation, someone might try to kill you or actually kill you. This is why you see investigative reporters that sometimes are investigating people and they end up dead, right? The teachings of the Buddha aren't explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And the way the world is if you go out into the world and you're slandering and gossiping people, at the height of this, you can actually be killed and murdered. At the very least, if you're gossiping with your friends and stuff like this, when your back's turned, they're going to be gossiping about you. Right? Because if you get people used to gossiping and you're gossiping with them and you're slandering, when you're turned away and you're somewhere else, they're going to be gossiping and slandering about you, right? So that's going to happen at the very least. So if you're disinterested in people gossiping and slandering about you, it's important for you to not gossip and slander about others. So what's happening here when someone's gossiping and slandering is they have a certain craving. They want to look good in front of other people, and they think if I diminish this person, then I'll look better, right? It's kind of like going into a room and everybody's got a candle, and it's like, if I put out that person's candle, my candle will shine brighter, right? But it's like, how can your candle shine brighter? Because we're in a dark room. It's wonderful to have everybody's candle shining bright. So we don't need to put out other people's candle in order for our candle to shine brighter, right? We can just allow everybody's candle to shine bright. We don't need to diminish and degrade other people and gossip and slander. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you not to do that, because it causes unwholesome results, and it's based in craving, desire, attachment. And ultimately, your mind is going to experience discontentedness when you're having this kind of situation. Then he teaches you to eliminate harsh speech. This is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. If you're speaking harshly and aggressively, there's some underlying craving, something you want, and you feel like if you're harsh and aggressive and bitter with this person, you're more likely to get it. But you can see that it damages your relationships because you've been in situations where you've been harsh and bitter and people have chosen to go away from you. Or maybe you lost a job or something like that. This is the cause and effect. And this is how you can independently verify the teachings of the Buddha. Nothing here is based in belief. You can see that whenever you've spoken harshly, it's caused difficulties and struggles in your life. So the Buddha teaches you to speak gently, where you pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. And that's what's going to produce the best results and help you to get rid of that craving, that underlying longing, yearning, where you're wanting things to be a certain way. And then there's this frivolous speech. This is like if you've ever been around somebody and it's just been like yada, 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 a yada, 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 a yada. It's not really a conversation. This person's like broadcasting, right? Maybe you've done this before and you're like, oh my goodness, when is this person going to be quiet? Oh my goodness, they're just talking so much, right? This is called frivolous speech. It's pointless. It's not clear. It's not concise, right? This is also based in craving, desire, attachment. Somebody might just have an underlying craving to talk. They just want to talk and they're just broadcasting to everybody. They might be talking for 15, 20, 30 minutes and nobody's saying anything else. It's just them talking. That's it, right? So the Buddha teaches you that it would be wise to not do that, to have a conversation where you can interact with people. And this is going to promote the most harmonious relationships for you. So getting rid of this frivolous speech is to get rid of this craving, desire, attachment to just talk and talk and talk and talk and speak in a very clear and concise and a precise way, because then you can be influential on the people around you, both personally and professionally. Whereas if you just yada, 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 eventually people are going to tune you out and they're not going to be interested in talking with you. So this is the top level of right speech. This is what you're usually working on when you first get started with this moral conduct, eliminating the lying, the slander, the harsh speech, and the frivolous speech. And as you're starting to get better and better at that, there's another teaching that connects into the Eightfold Path, because the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that everything else plugs into. And there's this teaching called the 5 factors of well-spoken speech that is a deeper level of detail around your speech. The Buddha teaches to speak at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. This is how you would ultimately like to structure all your speeches. And right now, it's probably would be a challenge for you to do this because there's certain relationships that you have that maybe you really struggle in those relationships, but you have a certain craving, you have a certain desire, you have a longing or yearning in those relationships. But if you gradually work at this, you can actually bring your practice up to this point. What it means to speak at the proper time is that you're not interrupting people. This is the first part of it. There's 3 aspects to it. Because you don't like it when people interrupt you. So if you went around interrupting people, it's going to damage your relationships. And there's a certain underlying craving there that the mind just wants to talk. You're not really listening to the person in order to understand what they're having to say. The mind's just listening in order to react in that situation. And the mind's jumping in on people, right? So you'd like to eliminate that. That's part of the mind's craving. Then you would also like to make sure your mind's prepared to speak. If you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're agitated or annoyed, it's not the proper time to speak. And you can see when you've done that, it's produced unwholesome results. When you've been angry and frustrated and bitter and you started speaking, that's all that came out of your mouth was anger and frustration, and it damaged relationships. So speaking at the proper time, the second aspect of that is to make sure your mind's prepared to speak, that it's calm and it's peaceful, that you don't have this bitterness and harshness in your own mind. And then the third part is making sure it's the proper time for other people to speak, right? Because they could be bitter and harsh and hostile. Even though you're calm, it might not be the proper time for them to speak and for you to speak to them. So it's better to not speak at all. Maybe they just came home from work and maybe you got a notice in the mail that says you're late on your rent and your life partner's there, your roommate's there, and they just got home from work and you've got 3 days to pay this rent or you're going to get kicked out. If you jump on them right away as soon as they come home, it's not the proper time to speak, right? Let them come home, put their bags down, take off their shoes, get something to eat, get some food or some drinks. And then maybe you're like, hey, honey, is this a good time to talk? I've got something important I need to share with you. Well, if they say no, right, it's not a good time to talk. Well, if you don't have a craving, a desire, a longing, yearning, you'll be completely fine with that. You'll be like, okay, well, we'll talk tomorrow then. Take a break. We'll have a discussion tomorrow about this thing. Or they might say, yes, this is a great time to talk. So now you can actually talk and you can discuss this certain challenge that you guys are facing that you need to overcome. So you need to make sure it's the proper time to speak, because then it's going to promote the best results in your day-to-day conversations. Speaking the truth, we've already talked about that up here and all the reasons why that's important. Speaking gently, we talked about that up here too. That's your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. You're going to need to pay a lot of attention to that in your certain languages that you speak, because I'm sure some of you speak other languages besides English. You're going to need to look at those languages and see what is it that you can use in order to speak gentle. Your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. In English, we might use words like please and thank you, or sir or ma'am, or things like this. We got to pay attention to that tone, the tempo, and the word choice. But other languages, you need to pay attention to that too. In the Thai language, it's actually really easy because they've structured their language around these teachings. There's all kinds of words that they use to show politeness, to show kindness and respect, to show friendliness in their conversations. This is why when you interact with Thai people, you probably notice that the vast majority of them are very gentle in the way that they speak, because it's built into the language. And even when they start speaking English in other languages, it kind of translates into those languages as well. So if you speak gently with people, that's going to produce the best results. Speaking beneficially, we've also spoke about that. This is about frivolous speech. Speaking beneficially is not about the topic necessarily that you're speaking about. It's about whether you're clear and concise and precise in the way that you're speaking. It's more about the method that you're speaking as opposed to the topic. There's not like an approved list of topics that the Buddha gave you to be able to speak about. It's more about the method of communication. So you'd like to be clear and concise and precise in the way that you're speaking. And then you'd like to wrap all of this in loving kindness. This is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And by the time we get to the mental discipline section, which is next week, I'm going to teach you a technique, or at least I'm going to introduce it to you, that is a meditation that's going to help you to cultivate this loving kindness in the mind so that you can actually speak with this loving kindness, where you have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And when you learn to practice this way, you'll see your relationships drastically improve more and more and more because you're putting this out. More and more people will start interacting with you in this same way. But when you're not speaking this way, this is where you're going to see the difficulties and struggles. And in certain relationships, maybe with your parents, with your siblings, with your life partner, maybe with your children, you might struggle with these the most. So don't think that you can snap your fingers and instantly go out there and start doing this. Of course, you would like to make attempts at that. But understand it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So you can independently verify this. Because remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. You're not interested in believing what I'm sharing with you here. You need to learn it, which is what I just did with you, help you to understand it intellectually through examining and investigating it. But now move it into reflection. Start reflecting on this. Think about situations where you didn't practice these. You might have missed 1 or 2 or 3. Maybe you missed all of these and you didn't do these at all. Because remember, the natural law of karma is affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. Look at conversations that you've had where you didn't speak at the proper time, where you weren't speaking the truth, you weren't gentle, you weren't beneficial, and you weren't speaking with a mind of loving kindness. Maybe you were speaking with inner hate. You can see that those conversations didn't go well, and it might have produced unwholesome results in your relationships, right? So you can independently verify that what the Buddha is teaching you here is true. But then look at the reverse of this too. Look at situations where you did use these 5 factors, because even though you don't know these 5 factors prior to studying them, there's been situations where you've been practicing these, right? Maybe here in Thailand, when you're interacting with your taxi driver or at the restaurant, or maybe you're meeting people in your hotel. Maybe you've been using these 5 factors without even realizing it. And those conversations have gone really well for you, right? It's produced wholesome results because that's what the Buddha is teaching you, is this natural law. So even though in the past you've been using these in certain situations, and in certain situations you haven't been, now you can start consciously using them, right? Because before you were unconscious of these, you were unaware of them, you didn't have that wisdom. But now having this wisdom, you can start using these more and more in your relationships, and that's where you're going to see things drastically improve. What you can do here is establish what we call in Thailand, it's called barami. This is a Thai word. Barami. What this word means is the one who people listen to. This is something you can establish. So if someone has barami, it means they are the one who people listen to. And in each village in Thailand, there tends to be some village elders who everybody kind of knows is very successful in life. And when I say successful in life, I don't mean financially successful necessarily. What I mean is that they're very successful in their relationships. They have very harmonious relationships. And people in the village, they know, hey, those people have barami. If you have a problem in your career or with your family or something like this, and you would like to get help, you just go see the village elders because they have barami. They're the ones who people listen to. And the reason why is because they speak very wisely. They speak in this way. And people know, like, wow, they're always so calm. They're always so loving and kind and warm and gentle. And people know that they can go speak with these people and get help. They're very influential in helping other people. So if you would like to establish barami in your community, people don't need to know what that word means, but by you practicing these 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you will become very influential in your personal life and in your professional life. Because when you're in business meetings or when you're in personal conversations and you're speaking in a way that is harmless and you're not causing harm to others through your speech, you'll actually be very influential and very helpful in your community. So the more you practice this, the more and more you're going to see that your relationships improve. It's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be in one day or 1 week or 1 month, but slowly but surely over multiple years of practicing this, you're going to see more and more improvement to the condition of your mind in your life because you're not causing harm to others through your speech. Now, while we call this right speech, you might actually think about this as right communication. Because during the lifetime of the Buddha, all they had was speech. But for us, we have all kinds of ways of communicating. We have speech, but we also have text messages, emails, social media, all these other ways of communicating. And you would like to make sure that all your communication is using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Because if you were really angry and you went over to your keyboard and started pounding out an email, it's not the proper time to be communicating. Maybe hit save on that email instead of send, right? And come back a few hours later, a few days later, and look at it and be like, do I really want to send this? Am I really interested in putting this out into the world? Because if I put this anger and bitterness and hostility out into the world, it's just going to come back to me. Or say you went to a job interview and you knocked it out of the park, and maybe these people are really enthused about hiring you as an employee. Well, if they get on your social media and they see that you're bitter and harsh and hostile in your social media, you're probably not going to get the job. So you would like all your communication, whenever you're interacting with people, to be practicing these 5 factors and understanding that it's going to take you some time to gradually build up your practice to that level. If you end up getting this book, this first book that I mentioned, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, if you get it for free, like I mentioned to you, you can get it in all those ways. You're going to see a lot of details about speech. This is just a little bit of it, but I went through each one of these 5 factors in the book, and I describe each one of them in detail and giving you examples so that you can see how to actually implement these in your day-to-day life. But then I also give you like a little shortcut, which is going to help you in some situations where you're going to need to know the 5 factors of well-spoken speech in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. You're going to need to practice that consistently over a long-term period. But in the next few months, as you're working to build up your practice and remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you might decide to remember this, that you should be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all your communication. You're not interested in having negative and harsh and bitter relationships with anybody at all, because it doesn't actually help you to have harshness and bitterness in any of your relationships at all. So if you can remember to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this will kind of help you in those situations where you can't quite remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. But ultimately, over time, you would like to commit those to memory so that you have it readily available in your mind. But in situations where you don't have it, if you can remember polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this will surely help you. But more and more, you would like to remember these 5 factors and actually practice them. When I was learning this, one of the things that I would do is in the morning, I would look at the 5 factors, just take like 2 minutes and kind of refresh my memory. And then I would go out in the morning and I would have my conversations with that present in my mind. And then at lunchtime, I would kind of review it and I would look at my conversations. I'd be like, I missed that one. I didn't do that one. I need to work on that one better. Or, I did these pretty well. I would like to continue to do those. So then in the afternoon, I would practice the 5 factors again with them fresh in my mind. And then sometimes in the evening, I would look at them again and kind of review my day and see where was I using them and where was I not using them. It only took a matter of weeks of me doing that I was able to then practice the 5 factors of well-spoken speech in all situations. So you might decide to have this where you can have the 5 factors of well-spoken speech like on your phone in notes, or maybe take a picture of this and have it where you can just review it, or take it from the book or these posters. It's on these posters. You can take a picture of it and you can just review it from time to time so that you can bring your practice up. Like maybe you're going into an important business meeting or something like this, and you might decide to refresh your memory on these before you actually go into that. So I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys might have about right speech. Is there anything you guys would like to ask about this particular topic of right speech? Looks like Rachel has a question. Remember, you guys can use the microphones here, and then online you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like.
So as the mind is trying to clean up the speech, it's not perfect. It's on it. It has noticed that when it's unwise, making unwise speech, it's due to personal existence view. So sometimes I'll say something, it'll realize, oh, that's not wise right away. But it's already out there. Mm-hmm. So what is the difference between understanding the craving of personal existence view and being mindful of that craving of personal existence view? Or is that the stuff saying things it said before in the past right? How do you know if it's not being mindful of a craving or if it's the subconscious?
Okay, so whether it's the subconscious mind or it's the conscious mind, it doesn't even matter because it's coming from this being and you've got to improve that, right? So what she's asking about is there's these 10 fetters in the mind, these 10 pollutions. One of them is called personal existence view. I'm going to be teaching this in a couple of weeks from now. And we actually talked about it last week a little bit too, is where the mind clings to a self-image or a self-identity. And now you cling to this wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. This is part of your ego, where the mind wants other people to perceive you in a certain way. And when they're perceiving you that way, you feel happy. But when people don't think of you in the way that you want them to think about you, you'll be frustrated and agitated. This is underlying craving. This is the mind craving, desiring, craving permanence for everybody to view you in a certain way. So when you're saying some kind of unwise speech and it's already out into the world, it's coming from craving, desire, attachment always. That's why the Buddha is teaching you to practice right speech, because as part of the Eightfold Path, you're working to eliminate those cravings, desires, attachments. So if it's already out into the world, you're going to need to clean that up. So apologizing is always a good place to start, right? Saying, hey, I'm so sorry. I should have said that. That was really unwise of me. You know, if that's appropriate, like if you've impacted others through your unwise speech, that's usually the first thing that you would like to do. And now if you need help, that's where you can come to your teacher and you can ask questions about how to either clean it up with the situation or whatever's going on in your own mind. You can work on cleaning that up. And that's why the mental discipline section is there in the Eightfold Path, because that's what's going to help you with the moral conduct. And that's what I'm going to teach next week. All right. Looks like we have a question from Julie online. She's asking here in Zoom. She says, David, if you're in a group of people in the workplace and one or more people are speaking poorly about another person, how do you back out of the conversation without alienating yourself? Well, you need to be comfortable with not worrying about how other people perceive you. That's the personal existence view that we were just talking about. If you're worried about how other people perceive you, then you'll be hesitant to walk out of that conversation. But if other people are being, if they're slandering and they're gossiping, that's their choice. It's not affecting you. The only way that it would affect you is if you allow your mind to adopt that. But oftentimes the best way to handle those kinds of situations are to step away from the conversation. And how you choose to do that is up to you. You can just quietly walk away without saying anything to anybody. You don't need to tell people what you're doing or how you're doing it. You could just choose to walk away. Or you could say, hey, I need to go use the bathroom. Let's catch up another time. That's always a great one, right? Because people aren't going to say, no, you can't go to the bathroom, right? You know, typically people are like, yeah, go to the bathroom. And maybe all you do is go into the bathroom and wash your hands. Maybe you don't even need to use the bathroom, but that's just a nice way for you to say, hey, I'm going to go to the bathroom. We'll catch up another time. And now you can end this conversation, and more people realize you don't gossip. You don't slander. Because if you have been gossiping and slandering and you choose to start walking away from that, the results of your decisions are they're going to gossip and slander about you. Look at her. She doesn't want to be around us anymore. She thinks she's a goody two-shoes. She doesn't want to be around us anymore. Like, wow, look at her. You know, they're going to gossip and slander about you. But when you get farther and farther away from that, that's where you're cleaning up your unwholesome karma from the past. So don't worry about how other people perceive you, because if people are gossiping or you're talking in unwise ways, when you walk away from the conversation, even if you just quietly do it without saying anything at all, they're going to still be gossiping and slandering about you, or bitter and harsh and hostile. But that's coming from their mind, and you can't control how they choose to function. All you can do is control your own decisions. Okay, let me see if we have any questions anywhere else here. Let's see. I'm looking here in Facebook as well. So I don't see any questions anywhere else here in YouTube or Facebook or YouTube. You're welcome, Julie. Pleased to help you. Okay, so now let's move on to the next one, which is right action. Okay, this is the fourth step of the Eightfold Path. Here the Buddha says, in what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct, This is called right action. So he's talking about three things here that we could do with our bodily actions that would cause harm to others, and that harm would come back to us. In several weeks, when we get to chapter 7, I'm going to be teaching something called the 5 precepts. And this is a deeper level of teaching that's plugs into the Eightfold Path, and it's going to expand these for you. Right now, the Buddha is just kind of saying these 3 things in a summary form, but when you see the 5 precepts, he expands it in a lot more detail, giving you much more illuminating language, because this kind of looks like a little bit black and white, but it's not so black and white. When you see his original words on the 5 precepts, he gives you much more illuminating language, because he's not saying preserve all life at all costs. When you see the 5 precepts, he's talking about living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. So there's more details here that you need to be able to see. Same thing like when he talks about refraining from sexual misconduct. One of the first things people ask is like, well, what is sexual misconduct, right? Because that's, up to the individual to decide. But the Buddha is actually teaching you in the 5 precepts details about sexual misconduct, about how you could cause harm with your sexual activity. Like if you were to have sex with a minor, or if you were to have sex without consent, like you were raping somebody, or if you were having sex outside of a committed relationship that you're in, or if you were to have sex with somebody else who's in a committed relationship. This is all the way that one would cause harm through their sexual activity. So the Buddha is teaching you here is 3 important things, 3 very impactful things that you could actually cause harm through your bodily actions. And if you cause harm, harm will come back to you. He's not giving you an exhaustive list here, because if you understand this particular step and this factor, then you know that it's unwise to cause any harm with your body. So notice he doesn't say, don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face. He doesn't say that, right? But if you understand this step, you know like, oh, that's really unwise, because if I punch someone in the face, the natural law of karma is they're probably going to punch me back, or they're going to pull out a knife or a gun, or their family or friends are going to attack me, right? This is the natural law of karma, of having chosen to punch someone in the face. So he's just giving you 3 really impactful ones, but you're going to need to figure out all the others. Notice he doesn't say, don't drag your suitcase through the aisle of a plane and run over people's feet and bump into their knees, right? He doesn't say that because planes didn't even exist during his lifetime. But if you understand the natural law of karma, you know that when you're bringing your suitcase onto an airplane, you do that politely and respectfully, where you're not bumping into people, and you put it into the overhead or under your seat in a way that doesn't impact other people, right? And this is a very wise way to function, because if you did drag your suitcase through the aisle of the plane and you could care less about how you're impacting others, it's only a matter of time before someone speaks up and says something aggressive and hostile or bitter, or maybe someone even slaps you or punches you or something like this. Who knows what might happen? That's the cause and effect, the natural law of karma. So you're going to need to understand that there's a lot of potential things that you could do to cause harm with your body. Like right now, you're sitting here listening to me, and you're not causing harm with your body. That's why no harm is coming to you. But if you started poking the person next to you in the eye, there's probably going to be some harm that comes to you, right? So that's why you're choosing not to do that, because you understand that that's a wise decision not to poke the person next to you in the eye, right? So there's a whole list of things that you could potentially do here, and that's where you need to figure these out. He's just giving you the 3 high-level ones that are very impactful. And then when he teaches you the 5 precepts, he's going to expand these for you, because it's important to point out that this sexual misconduct doesn't include same-gender relationships. So if you prefer same-gender relationships, or you know somebody who does, the Buddha never taught that is harmful. Because if there's 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex with each other, they're not causing harm to anyone. If there's a male and a female, or there's a male and a male, or a female and a female, they're not causing harm to anyone. There's never been a time in history where all people had sex with the opposite gender. That would be permanence. If every single woman had sex with a man and every single man had sex with a woman, that would be permanence. And we don't live in that type of world. We live in an impermanent world where things are constantly changing. So ever since the beginning of human history, there's been men who've had sex with men and women who've had sex with women, and there's been women and men who've had sex with each other, opposite genders. So oftentimes people in the world have a craving for everybody to have sex with the opposite gender, and they get angry when they see a same gender relationship, but they're causing that anger themselves. That same gender relationship, they're not causing that person's anger. That person is causing it themselves. So if you prefer same gender relationships, or you know someone who does, the Buddha never teaches that it's part of this harmful conduct, and he was aware of it because he talks about it in his teachings essentially, but he just makes an observation that it's occurring, but he doesn't teach anything about it because he knows 2,500 years ago, he knew that it doesn't cause harm. This is how wise this individual was, that 2,500 years ago, he knew that same gender relationships don't cause harm. Today, we see that there's a fair number of people in the world that don't understand that. More and more, we're starting to see more and more people understanding that, but this individual understood it 2,500 years ago. That's how wise he was. So when you see something like this where he talks about refraining from sexual misconduct, you'll get more information on that when I teach the 5 precepts, but just understand it doesn't involve same-gender relationships. And you're going to need to expand upon this to be able to understand more, because it's not black and white. It's not never kill, right? It's not preserve all life at all costs. Because if someone was breaking into your house at 3 a.m. in the morning, they're not bringing you chocolate and flowers. They're there to do harm, right? And if you could get out of the house and get away, okay, that would be best, but you might be backed up into a corner and now you need to defend yourself, right? It wouldn't be very loving and very kind and very compassionate to this being if you just stood there and let them hit you with a stick or stab you with a knife or whatever else. You need to protect this being who you are. So if you need to cause this person harm in order to stop the harm that's coming to you, that's the results of their decisions. They're choosing to cause harm by breaking into your house at 3 a.m. in the morning and come attack you. And now based on their choice, this harm is coming to them, right? You're not going out into the world actively looking to hurt somebody, but by you just being in your home and now this harm is coming to you, now there's harm that's coming back to that person. And that's the result of their decisions, not your decisions, right? So there's more here that you're going to learn as part of the 5 precepts. And you'll see in the teachings of the Buddha where he talks about substances that cause heedlessness. This is a bodily action where you're causing harm to this being who you are. Like if you were to take drugs and intoxicants and things that cause a lack of clarity in your mind, a lack of awareness of mind, that's causing harm to yourself. You'll also see where he talks about gambling, because this is also based in craving, desire, attachment. So you're going to see other things if you study the teachings of the Buddha more closely. Then there's this, do you guys have any questions about right action? Let me see if you guys have any questions about right action before we move on to right livelihood. Sometimes I teach it all the way through. Sometimes I stop and ask questions. Let's see if we have any here online. Nope, I don't see any questions. Okay, so now let's go to right livelihood. Right livelihood, first of all, a livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life, right? If you sustain your life off of causing harm to others, this harm is going to come back to you. So here in the Eightfold Path, the Buddha gives something very general and very broad. He says, in what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, which means a student who's learning very closely, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. But then you need to go deeper into his teachings to understand what he's teaching about right livelihood, because the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that everything else plugs into, right? So he's got this teaching here, which is part of what's called the first fold of purification, that helps you to understand livelihoods that would be harmful. And if you practiced any of these livelihoods, you're basing your life and your ability to sustain your life off of causing harm to others. So if you were to have business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons, you're actually sustaining your life off of causing harm to others. And now this harm is going to come back to you. But remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. You can independently verify all of these. So let's just take one of them. I'll show you how to do this. Let's take this substances that cause heedlessness. If I was standing on the street corner selling crystal methamphetamine or heroin or cocaine into the community, I'm causing harm to the community, and I'm sustaining my life off of causing harm to others. And now harm is going to come back to me, right? By me selling this substance, these people are going out and robbing and stealing. Maybe they're selling their body in order to be able to get me money or something like this. They're getting addicted to these substances, and now they're bringing me money because of that, right? Well, now standing on the street corner doing that, I can easily get beat up. I can get murdered. I can get robbed. I can get arrested. I can get addicted to these substances myself. This is all the results of my decisions. I chose to do this if I was doing this, right? And now this is this harm that's coming back to me because of that. So this is the natural law of karma, of cause and effect. There's no being who's overseeing this. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's about seeing what's wise and unwise in the world. So you could go through each one of these and see this for yourself. And as you do this, it's important to understand that the natural law of karma is functioning at a much higher level than the human laws, because most places in the world, it's illegal to stand on the street corner and sell crystal methamphetamine or heroin or cocaine, right? But this natural law of karma is functioning at a much higher level. It's all substances that cause heedlessness. If I worked in my home country as a cashier at a liquor store, I'm not going to get arrested. The government's not going to come and put me in handcuffs and take me off to jail. The government's like, yeah, you would like to be a cashier at that liquor store? Go ahead. You can do that all day long. But if you understand the natural law of karma, you might come to understand it's unwise to do that. Because those are the places that usually get robbed, people get beat up, people get murdered because of the natural law of karma. Because people are coming there for those substances, and now at the very least, you're dealing with people who are maybe intoxicated. And now you have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, right? So you need to be able to look at this beyond just the human laws, because the human laws are created by humans, which are prone to error and mistakes. But the natural law of karma isn't that way. The natural law of karma is the most unbiased teacher that you will ever find. It's functioning at a much higher level than human laws. So you might decide, if you understood the natural law of karma, that it's unwise to work in that bar or that liquor store or things like that. Even though your government says that it's fine for you to do it, you might decide personally, not interested in doing that, right? So you need to look at each one of these 5. Then the Buddha teaches you beyond these 5, he teaches you how to conduct your livelihood, because how you choose to conduct your livelihood is going to determine your professional success. Whereas if you were scheming, you were flattering, hinting, belittling, or pursuing gain with gain, this is going to produce unwholesome results in your livelihood. Because what the Buddha is helping you to be able to do is get to this livelihood that you thoroughly enjoy, that you have ambition, that you have motivation, that you have enthusiasm in the work that you do from day to day, that you don't just drag yourself to work each day and you despise the place where you work. Because how could you ever get to a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life if you dread going to this place for 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours every day during the work week? You wouldn't be able to get to peace and joy. And you might not be in that place right now, and that's okay. But part of this path is learning how to get to that right livelihood where you're thoroughly enjoying the work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So what scheming is, this is like corruption, right? So let's just say I was a politician. That's not one of those 5 livelihoods. It's not selling business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. But if I was corrupt, right? Because if I'm like a mayor of a town, or I'm making laws or something like that, I'm not causing any harm to anybody. But if I was corrupt while I was doing it and I was scheming, this is going to cause harm in the community. And now when people find that out, they're not going to elect me to do this job, and now I'm going to be out of a job, and I'm going to have difficulties supporting myself. Or let's just say I was doing flattery, right? What flattery is where you have insincere comments just to try to get people to buy things from you. If you've ever walked into a store and you're like, wow, that shirt really looks beautiful on you. It really brings out the colors of your eyes. You're so handsome. Hey, there's this really nice piece of jewelry over here that I have to sell you. It'll go great with that shirt that you've got on, right? Right away, you're like, I kind of feel right being here, right? You might feel like, I'm not interested in buying anything from this store. So if you did that, where you were just flattering people with insincere comments in order to get them to buy things from you, you're not going to be able to build a wholesome reputation in the community where you can be successful professionally. So the Buddha teaches you that it would be unwise to do that. What hinting is where you're not being clear and concise and precise in your work. Say all of us were on a project team and we needed to go brief our boss about this project that we're doing. We'd like to be clear and concise and precise in the way that we're talking. Whereas if we're hinting and we're kind of beating around the bush and not being really clear about what it is that we're working on, the boss isn't going to be able to have a clear understanding of what it is that we're doing. And him or her will have difficulties providing us guidance to be able to continue to grow professionally. So you'd like to be clear and concise and precise in the way that you're communicating within your livelihood. What belittling is that if you were degrading or diminishing your coworkers, your business partners, your customers, or even your competition, this is not going to go well for you in your profession. Sometimes people think that, we should belittle or degrade our competition, and that's going to make us look better. But actually, people don't like that. If you talk with your customers and you're belittling and degrading your competition, it's actually going to cause difficulties in your livelihood where they're not going to be willing to do business with you. So if people ask you about your competition, you could just say, I'm not really sure what they do. This is what I can do for you, and here's how I can help you. And if you would like this kind of help, I can help you with this, right? You don't need to talk in negative ways about your competition, right? So that would be to eliminate your belittling, where you're not talking down or degrading or diminishing your coworkers, your business partners, your customers, or your competition. What pursuing gain with gain is, this is where you're just doing the work in order to make money. You could care less about the product or the service. You're just trying to make money, and that's it. If you've ever had this kind of job where you just showed up for the paycheck and that's it, you probably dragged yourself to work each day. You probably felt very mundane and very bored in this particular livelihood. So if you would like to get to a livelihood that is going to be where you have enthusiasm, ambition, and motivation in this livelihood, you're going to need to make sure that you care more about this work than just the money, because that will burn out. There's a craving there. The mind just wants this money, and eventually that's going to burn out, and you're going to feel so unmotivated in this job or this occupation. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see how to get to this right livelihood where you can have enthusiasm, ambition, and motivation in your day-to-day work, to the point where it doesn't even feel like work, that you just thoroughly enjoy what you do in and out each individual day. And if you're not currently in that place, that's okay. There's growth and development for you. You can move beyond that. You might need to move to a new job or a new career or a new company, or maybe you're in between jobs right now. Maybe you're unemployed. If you would like more details on how to get to a right livelihood, there's more details beyond this that the Buddha shares, and you can see it in our book series. If you go to volume 12, chapter 14, that's going to give you the full details about how to get to a right livelihood where you can have enthusiasm and ambition and thoroughly enjoy the work that you do. Here in Thailand, if you go out there, you might meet somebody standing on the street corner who's selling mangoes and sticky rice. And he or she has the biggest smile on their face. And they go out in the morning and they just enjoy walking through and picking those mangoes off the trees. They prepare them with their sticky rice and their coconut milk, and they come out maybe in the evening and stand on the street corner, and they sit there and they slice up the mango for you, and they serve it over the sticky rice and pour the coconut milk on there with a big old smile, and they collect their little 40 baht, and they just feel so wonderful about serving that mango and sticky rice to you. And they can't imagine doing anything else in the world but serving you that mango and sticky rice. So what you need to do is you need to find your mango and sticky rice. What is your mango and sticky rice? What is it that you're going to thoroughly enjoy every day that you go to work, and you just can't imagine doing anything else other than that? And even if you did get paid for it, you would still do it. That's how much you enjoy it. And of course, you're going to need to get paid because you're going to need to provide for basic necessities to sustain your life. But you would like to find something that you enjoy so much that even if you didn't get paid for it, you would still do it because you enjoy it that much. Because that person who's selling the mango and sticky rice, they enjoy doing that so much. They just enjoy growing those mangoes, picking those mangoes, bringing them to the market and serving it to you. So keep that in mind. Find your mango and sticky rice so you can have a very enjoyable life where you can have enthusiasm and ambition and motivation in the work that you do each day. And you might have to bounce around a little bit and try a couple different careers in a couple different companies before you find that thing that's like, I could do this for the rest of my life and be completely fulfilled. And you enjoy it so much. That's what you're looking for. But it's going to take you time to do that because right now your mind might be craving this or craving that or craving that. You might be chasing after money, or you might be chasing a big title, or you might be just trying to meet your parents' expectations and fulfill what it is that your parents want. So when you strip away all of that and you get to what is it that you really enjoy and what is it that you would really like to be providing this world, you can find your mango and sticky rice. Okay, so this is right livelihood, and this is how the Buddha teaches you to get to that point where you can thoroughly enjoy your livelihood. So just as a little summary, and then I'll open up to questions that you guys have. Right speech or right communication is to not cause harm through your verbal conduct in all your communication, verbal, text, chat, posts, emails. You would like to get to the point where it's all harmless, where you're eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. But then in more detail, that you're practicing speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. That's what you would like to ultimately get to. You might need to review that throughout your day in order to bring it up in your mind and practice it more and more closely. Then you would like to ensure that all your conduct with your body isn't causing harm, that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions, whether it's dragging a suitcase through the aisle of a plane, whether it's hitting somebody in the face. You would like to eliminate these kinds of things. If you watch Thai people really closely, the people who are practicing, when they walk through a crowd, they will even hold their clothing up against their body sometimes as they're walking through a crowd so that their loose clothing doesn't bump into somebody. This is how closely sometimes they'll be practicing this kind of teaching because they're disinterested in causing harm through their bodily actions. Whether you choose to practice it that closely or not is a choice for you to make. But I just show you this because you might see this while you're here in Thailand, that people even hold their clothing up against their body as they're walking through a crowd, right? So you would like to make sure all your bodily actions are harmless. And then you need to find your mango and sticky rice, right? This right livelihood where you're not causing harm through your way that you're sustaining your life, that you eliminate any kind of business in weapons, living beings, substances that cause heedlessness, meat, or poisons. You would like to eliminate all of that. So you might need to look at your livelihood and determine whether any of those things are happening. Then there's scheming, there's flattery, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. You would like to eliminate those as well, and that's what's going to produce the best results so that you can now find your mango and sticky rice and thoroughly enjoy what it is that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So do you guys have any questions on any of these factors here from the Eightfold Path, the right speech, right action, and right livelihood? Yes, please help yourself to the microphones. And remember, those of you guys online, you guys can ask questions through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. I'm not sure who's first or who's second, so you guys can just go.
So I'm just curious, for those street vendors selling mango sticky rice, how can you tell that they're actually truly enjoying selling the mango sticky rice, or they're just compromising it to the reality of providing daily necessities? How can you tell between these two? And from your point of view, do majority of the people, they're just compromising, or actually there are people that they can find their true mango sticky rice?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this path isn't about determining other people, whether that person is enlightened or how closely is that person practicing the teachings. It's about your practice. So I'll give you this as an example, because there are certainly plenty of people here in Thailand that are thoroughly enjoying the work that you're doing. If you're around Thai people long enough and you go to the same restaurants or the same places, or you live within a Thai community, you can see that Thai people, they generally don't accept jobs just based on money. And one of the ways that I know this is at one time I used to have a company here in Thailand, and there was this one individual that he was a tour guide, and he had taken me on this tour, and I was like, man, this guy is really great. I'd like to hire him for my company. So I found out how much money he made, and I offered him like 4 or 5 times more than what he was making. And I offered him this position. And I thought for sure he would accept this position. But after he thought about it, he came back and he's like, I really enjoy what I'm doing. I'm able to support my family and the things that I need to do. I am not going to accept that job, but I'm going to help you find somebody that will be willing to do that job for you. And he did. He actually helped me to find somebody to do the actual job. So there's plenty of people here that are thoroughly enjoying the work that they're doing. And even when there's more money being offered to them, they won't accept it because they just thoroughly enjoy what they're doing. It's not about the money for them. Oftentimes in certain cultures, we just chase the money. And then ultimately we're unhappy in our job and we don't understand why. And the Buddha is explaining to you why. So what's important is that you get to a point where you understand these teachings and you're practicing them. Whether other people are learning and practicing them, that's on them to be able to do that. And the second part of your question is about like how society functions. The vast majority of the world that I know of beyond Thailand, they're not practicing these teachings. And this is one of the reasons why you see so much stress and burnout in the work environment. People are oftentimes just chasing more money, or they're chasing that big title or that big corner office. They just want to get that beautiful office space or whatever it is. And people are generally unhappy with the work that they're doing. And that's one of the reasons why I teach this, because at one time that's where I was too. I was unhappy with the work that I was doing. But more and more as I learned these teachings and I got to my Right Livelihood, which is sharing these teachings with all of you, then I can see what the Buddha was talking about here. So in my opinion, the vast majority of the world isn't practicing these, and that's why you see so much stress and anxiety in the work environment. Other people?
So when we start this, you said that the desire to craving something, the craving desire is something we need to decrease, but I don't know whether or not the desire to craving, to decrease the craving and permanent peaceful is another kind of, desire.
Yeah. So it's important to understand what we mean when we say craving, desire, attachment. I talked about this last week. What this is a longing or yearning, a chasing after the objects of your affection, forming your inner feelings on whether you get this thing or not, right? That's something that the unenlightened mind can see usually pretty clearly. Like if you've ever been in the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes or jewelry or something like this or clothing, and you're like, oh, I just gotta have that. I want that so badly. That's the longing, yearning, not the object itself, not the clothing or the jewelry. That's not the attachment. It's the way the mind's longing, yearning for it, right? But also if you were all the way over here on the other side where you could care less whether you had clothing or not, that's not going to lead to peacefulness either. Usually the unenlightened mind can see these two extremes pretty well, either chasing or being dull and lethargic. But the Buddha is talking about this middle way where you can gradually work towards goals, objectives, or interests without forming your inner feelings on whether you get this thing or not. So the craving, desire, attachment isn't the object itself. So the fact that enlightenment exists and it's possible for you to get to this enlightened mental state doesn't mean that you need to pursue it as a craving, desire, attachment. You don't need to long and yearn for this enlightened mental state. You can gradually work your way towards it. But if you are longing, yearning, and chasing after this enlightened mental state, you won't actually get to it because there's a craving, desire, attachment there. There's a longing and a yearning for it. But also, if you are all the way over here on the other side, where you could care less about what you experience within your own mind and what you experience in your own life, you're not going to get to peace and joy there either. So there's this middle way where you can gradually make your way to enlightenment, where each week perhaps you're coming to classes, where you're reading books, where you're coming to seek guidance from a teacher, where you're meditating and these kinds of things. And you're not longing, yearning, you're not chasing after it, but you're also not dull and lethargic and complacent either. You're just gradually working towards it day by day. And that's what you can actually accomplish. So it's not the object itself. It's the way the mind is pursuing it. So you could pursue it by chasing it, or you could just be dull and lethargic, but neither of those are going to lead to peace. But you can gradually work towards goals, objectives, or interests. But you need to make sure it's a true goal. If you have a goal to get something and you get it and you get so happy, but if you don't get it, you get sad or frustrated, that's not a goal. That's a craving, desire, attachment. That's not a true goal. It's a craving, desire, attachment masquerading as a goal. A true goal, you can work towards it. And if you get to it, great. And if you don't, that's fine too. But you're learning in the process. So if I was working towards a goal and I didn't get to the goal, I would need to look at it and be like, what should I do here? Should I extend my timeline and give myself more time to accomplish this? Because that's an option. Should I add more resources to be able to allow me to meet this goal? Because that's an option. Or, you know what, maybe I'm just fine with the 80%, and that would be just fine. I don't need to go all the way, right? Something like enlightenment, I would encourage you to set that as a goal where you're gradually working towards it, realizing that you may not get there in this lifetime, but that's okay. There's no reason why you can't get there in this lifetime. You're plenty able to be able to make your way to this enlightened mental state, but you would like to do it gradually rather than chasing after it. So you don't have to pursue it as a longing or yearning. So that word desire, sometimes people just think like, if you decide to do it, is that a desire? No, because you can pursue it as an interest or an objective. The desire is the way the mind longs and yearns for it, not just the fact that you're interested in obtaining this particular thing. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for the brilliant elaboration.
Mm-hmm.
So until now, I feel like all your teachings sound very utopian, and to the extent that I feel like it's too ideal, so that I started to question about the pragmatism in reality. So, or I can say it in another way, that we all know the nature of the principle of yin and yang. In that sense, we feel happy and also we feel unhappy. And we can also say that it is exactly because we feel unhappy that we can genuinely feel happy, because of the negativity that we know what is positivity. So in that sense, I started to question, like, what's the point of always be, to deliver good, right speech, to behave rightly, to have goodwill, because we are all imperfect, and we sometimes we are angry, we are furious, we are we feel resentment. So I just feel like, how can we actualize what you have been delivered until now?
Sure. The way that you're currently thinking is based on your current understanding of the world. And right now, you don't have full wisdom about the world around you. This is why you say things like, everybody understands yin and yang. We all understand it. And that's actually untrue. Not everybody understands that. Or you might say, just earlier, you said, everybody is imperfect. And that's not actually true. We're all born imperfect. That's true. But as you get to enlightenment, this individual is now a perfect being. They're not causing any harm to anybody in the world around them. So it's not true to say that everybody is imperfect. So this is the underlying problem that the mind has, is it lacks wisdom about the world around it, and it doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence, that this impermanence and this constant change. So while what I'm sharing with you here is the perfect ideal way that a human being would function, and having done so, your mind will be completely peaceful and joyful as you're training your mind more and more and more. And right now you're thinking in your current understanding of the world that you need to experience unhappiness in order to be able to experience happiness. But that's just what you currently know. If you penetrate into these teachings more deeply and you understand them and you independently verify them, you will see that you're capable of getting to this permanent peace and this permanent joy. But you need to be careful, because what the unenlightened mind is going to do is it's going to try to justify what you're currently experiencing, and it's going to try to remain complacent because it really doesn't want to do this work in order to experience something better. Even though the person might be like, wow, that peace and that joy sounds really wonderful. If I could experience that peace and joy permanently. Well, the mind's over here saying, nah, we're not going to do that. Like, let's come up with all these excuses of why we can't do that. So what I would encourage you to do is to penetrate into this more deeply, because so far all that you've heard is the moral conduct section from me, because I don't think you've studied with me before. But if you penetrate into the very first part of this, which is right view and right intention, and you learn this in more detail, you'll be able to see how your mind is causing all these feelings, and you'll be able to see how by you improving your moral conduct and the way that you interact with people, you'll experience improvement in the way that you're experiencing relationships. Right now, you probably experience certain struggles and difficulties in your relationships. And that's just from a lack of wisdom of this Eightfold Path and the moral conduct and how to have harmonious relationships. So while it is a challenge to bring your practice up to this point, once you do it, it's effortless. You can actually practice these teachings effortlessly. It's just like upgrading the operating system of your computer. When you first upgrade, it's very challenging to get familiar with this new operating system. But as you do, you can see like, wow, this is so much easier. I can function through this so much easier. So be careful that the mind isn't going to be interested to do that work to get you up and running on this better way of life that the Buddha taught. But I can assure you that I've lived my life in the way that you may be living your life now in terms of the way my mind functioned before, and I live my life the way that it does now through these teachings. It's like night and day. And there is a better way of life out there for you that you can actually realize, and you can actually put it into practice, but you're going to need this whole entire path. That's why I'm breaking it down into these 3 sections. So far, you've just learned this moral conduct section. But you need to learn the wisdom really closely. And then next week, I'm going to teach you the mental discipline. Without the mental discipline, you wouldn't be able to practice the moral conduct. So while this sounds ideal or utopia for you, yeah, it is. Because once you get up and running in this level of moral conduct, life will be so harmonious for you. But you wouldn't actually be able to do it until you understand the mental discipline. So that's how you actually implement it into your day-to-day life. Other questions?
Hello. Okay. So I started thinking about like injustices and like the anger and sadness that comes from seeing that happen. And I understand that if people conducted themselves in this way, maybe if everyone did, that maybe injustices wouldn't be happening. But I often see that these negative feelings like help mobilize people to fight against those injustices. So I guess what do Buddhist teachings have to say when it comes to that?
Yeah, you don't need to fight. This is one of the challenges in the world, is people think that if things don't happen the way I want it to happen, that I need to go out into the world and fight, and I need to convince people to do it my way. This is the craving, desire, attachment, but this is also the ego. The ego is where the mind sees itself as being above people or below people, seeing yourself as superior or inferior to others, and now it becomes judgmental towards other people. The ego is going to think my way is the right way and everybody else is the wrong way. And now they're going to classify things as being an injustice, right? Well, if you understand the natural law of karma, you understand that it's not possible for somebody to run and hide from the decisions that they're making. Any decision that they make, either wisely or unwisely, they're going to experience the results of that. So for example, let's just say somebody had their bloody footprint at the murder scene, and their bloody murder weapon was under their bed, and there's blood all over their car, and they go to court and they're found not guilty. Right? This isn't an injustice. This is just the cause and effect of what's happened. This person was maybe very wealthy. They were able to afford really great legal team, and maybe they went to court and they were able to get found not guilty. Well, in this court of law is the laws of society. They're imperfect. They're never going to be created and enforced equally amongst all beings, because they're being administered and created by human beings, and human beings are imperfect. And we should always aspire for that to be more and more accurate. But just because human beings are imperfect in the unenlightened state, then they're going to administer these laws imperfectly amongst all beings. So this individual that's gone to court and been found not guilty, okay, they escaped the human law, right, of the court system, but they haven't escaped the natural law of karma. They're still going to experience difficulties in getting employment. They're going to have difficulty securing housing. They're going to have guilt and shame and fear in their own mind. They're going to have difficulties in their other relationships, because if you have enough anger and hostility to kill a human being, it's not like all the rest of your relationships are going well. You're struggling in those relationships too. So this individual is going to have all kinds of problems that they're going to need to deal with as a result of the decisions that they're making. So they haven't escaped the justice, so to speak. They've escaped the laws of society. But the human law, they're still losing their wealth. They're still losing their reputation in the community. They're going to have difficulty securing housing, employment, all these different things. This is the results of their decisions. So what you ultimately come to when you understand the natural law of karma is that everybody is experiencing whatever they need to experience. And I'll give you another example of this too. Let's just say I was in a gang all throughout my teenage years and my early 20s, but say around 25, I realized that it was unwise for me to be in this gang, and I get out of the gang. But while I was in the gang, I was selling drugs, I was murdering people, I was doing all kinds of unwholesome things. But now I never got caught for any of that stuff. And now I got out of the gang when I was 25. But now let's just say around 26, 27 years old, the gang does some kind of murder or something, and it gets pinned on me. And now I go to court and I'm found guilty, even though I'm not guilty, because I never did this murder. But all that other stuff that I did that I never got caught from, I never got in trouble for any of that stuff. But now I'm getting this experience where now I'm being found guilty for this murder that I didn't even do. And someone might say that that's an injustice. But see, that's the natural law of karma, that you can't run and hide from the results of your decisions. So oftentimes we sit back and we look at what we see on TV or in a book or a magazine or something, and we're just seeing a very limited view of what's actually occurring in the world, and we might label it as an injustice. But typically what's happening is it's just that what I thought should occur in this situation didn't occur, so therefore the mind's labeling it as an injustice, and now the mind can be angry or frustrated because it didn't happen the way that I wanted it to happen. And now someone might feel like they need to go out and fight or advocate for their position in order to get other people to do things their way. And what you come to realize is that all of these things that are occurring in the world are happening as a result of decisions that are being made, and it's being made by other people, and you can't really change other people's minds. They have to decide for themselves to be able to gain wisdom and make better decisions. Now, one of the things that we can do is people oftentimes ask me about protesting. Right now, this has kind of come up again because of what's going on in some parts of the world. And they're like, how can we protest and also practice these teachings? So what I teach people is like, there's no harm in protesting if you just go out and you're making your voice heard. But a wise person would try to make some kind of educational component to their protest, right? Because if you just go out and we like destroy property, we're looting, we're damaging, we're fighting, we're burning buildings, the message gets lost of what it is that we're truly looking to help other people to understand. One of the people who did this best, in my opinion, is Martin Luther King Jr. When he was interested in helping people to get better understanding about how to treat human beings in the world, he organized events where they peacefully, in a nonviolent way, would just walk down the street. But then at the end, he would deliver some kind of speech. He would educate people and he would teach them, right? So if we're going to protest, just going out and destroying property or inconveniencing people by blocking streets and stuff like that, maybe there's an ambulance coming through with a dying patient in the back, and now we've blocked the street, and now that person can't get to the hospital. We're causing harm in our protest, and that's not the way to influence improvement, because our message gets lost in that harm that we're causing. So if we do this in a nonviolent, peaceful way, and we add some kind of educational component to it where we're sharing wisdom with people, now people on their own can choose to learn that, because we're not going to be able to force or control or fight our way to a better understanding, each individual person needs to decide that they're interested in learning wisdom. And now they come to this event, or they hear it on the news, or there's a couple sound bites that get put into a website or a news article or something like this. And that's what helps influence people's improvement, because now they've gained wisdom to make better decisions in the future. So that's the way to really help with these situations. And you'll actually do that better when you don't have craving, desire, attachment. When you're functioning out of anger and frustration and agitation and resentment and hostility and bitterness, that fight that you're doing is ultimately going to produce unwholesome results. Where if you can organize peacefully, calmly, figure out what's the best way to have our voices heard in a successful way that includes education and wisdom, now you can change people's hearts and minds, right? Because now people are choosing to learn whatever is happening in that situation. But that takes more planning. It takes more wisdom. It takes strong leaders to be able to say, hey, this is a better way for us to help our voices be heard. And we haven't really seen too many people like that. Nowadays, protests oftentimes divulge into criminal behavior where we're destroying and causing harm. There's obviously some examples of that here and there, but you haven't seen any really strong leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. for such a long time in history. But that's the way that you can influence people's hearts and minds, but ultimately it's that person who's choosing to learn. We can't force people to do things our way, because people will never do things our way. They have to choose for themselves that this is a wise way to do things, and all we can do is offer the guidance and the understanding and the opportunity for them to learn if they choose. You're welcome. There's some more back there.
Yeah. Hi, really thank you for your sharing. And still have one more question is I understand that everything is impermanent, and which is to say that nothing lasts forever. So I wonder if we still need to have any goals or any ambition to achieve or to strive for, because at the end we are all the same. We have to lose everything, and we just maybe or to say we have to die with nothing. So do we need to do anything or do nothing at all?
So both of those are the two extremes that the Buddha is teaching you would be unwise, like chasing, but then also being dull and lethargic. That's not going to produce beneficial results. You can have goals, you can have ambitions, you can work towards certain objectives in your life, but you need to be able to learn how to do that from the middle way, which the mind doesn't know how to do in the unenlightened state. If you ask me, the Buddha was one of the most ambitious, most enthusiastic individuals that I've ever known, right? Because here he was 2,500 years ago, teaching in a language that was very isolated to that particular region of the world, and his goal was for his teachings to reach the entire world. How's he going to do that 2,500 years ago when travel wasn't very, easy, when the language that he spoke in wasn't very well understood by the vast majority of the world? So he was very ambitious. He was very motivated to share his teachings, and he did so from the age of 35 to 80, but he did it as a goal, objective, or interest. And he realized that he wouldn't be able to meet that goal during his lifetime. He realized that his teachings reaching the entire world was going to be after his death, long after his death. And here we are, 2,500 years later, we're able to share his teachings in this international language of English. Now that the entire world, more and more people are learning this English language, and they'll be able to learn his teachings. We can travel really easily with airplane travel and all this kind of stuff. And then we've got the internet now that I'm sharing teachings all over the world. Like, I don't even know where everybody is. I know some of these people that are online with us. It's being shared all over the world. But that goal and objective that he was working towards 2,500 years ago, it's not being realized until now, today, right? So this is what it means to have a true goal and objective, is to realize that you work towards it, and you may or may not achieve it during your lifetime, but you gradually work towards it joyfully, right? So it's helpful to have goals and objectives, but your mind is probably chasing after those things, which isn't an actual true goal. Whereas if you get happy when you get something and you get sad or frustrated when you don't get it, that's actually not a goal. That's a craving, desire, attachment. So I have a goal. One of my goals is to restore these teachings of the Buddha back into the world in a way that the entire world can understand them. And now, during my life, countless people can get to enlightenment. And then once I die, there'll be preserved teachings that countless more people can get to enlightenment after my death. This isn't a goal that I'm going to be able to accomplish in terms of completely restoring the teachings during my lifetime. But if I do the work that I need to do now, that by the time I die, there will be plenty of people around that will be able to carry the teachings forward beyond that. So you need to learn how to work towards a goal or objective, making wise decisions, but not forming your emotions based on that. Because when I first started teaching here, people didn't know that I was teaching. So there were times when I would come here and there'd be 2 or 3 people here. Or there were times when I'd come here and there'd be nobody here, right? Because they didn't know that I was here. So I'd just wait patiently. Nobody would come. And then I would just go home and I would help people that needed my help online, that were sending me messages or emails or things like this. But slowly but surely, I just kept making decisions to share these teachings. And now there's typically a minimum of about 30 people here. And during busy season, this whole room will be full. There'll be 80, 100 people here that are learning. And then there's people learning online and through the online live stream and stuff. But initially, when I first started teaching, some days there was nobody, right? So if I had a craving, a desire, attachment, I would have been frustrated. I would have been demotivated. I would have been agitated and annoyed that nobody was here to learn with me, right? But then also if I sat at home and I did nothing and I could care less about the world and I didn't share these teachings at all, that's not helpful either. So if I was craving to have 5,000 people to teach every single time, I would be discontent when I only have one person to teach. But also if I was at home and I was never sharing the teachings, I'm not going to be peaceful and joyful there either. So that's where you find the middle way, where you just gradually, day by day, share the teachings. And sometimes I've been to events where I've taught 20,000 people at one time, right? I've been to those kinds of events where I teach 20,000 people. They're literally there learning with me. But then I've also taught just one person, where I'm sitting in an airport and somebody comes and talks to me and says, hey, can you help me understand this? And I'll teach that one person, right? So you need to be willing to not have these expectations and these cravings where you can pursue things as a goal, objective, or interest and then just slowly accomplish whatever it is that you're working towards. But with the mind's craving, it's going to want those pleasant feelings. It's going to want that happiness and that excitement. It's like a drug, and the mind will chase it and chase it and chase it and chase it. And it can only be happy if it gets that thing. So when you train your mind not to do that, you can be completely content with teaching one person or teaching 20,000 people, right? So this is what you need to be able to do within your life and whatever it is that you're working towards on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Eamon, you still have a question? No? Okay. We have one coming in. Oh, you have one? Yeah? Okay, go ahead. Let me ask this one here while you're getting your mic. Jules is asking, or Julius is asking, if I'm working in aged care and caring for the disabled, am I considered practicing in the business of living beings, and is this wrong livelihood? What it means to practice a livelihood that is with living beings, it means the final product is a living being. Like if you were breeding dogs, right? This is like the final product is a living being. Or if you were, say, a sex worker, the final product is a living being. So what you're providing as a final product is medical care or care of an elderly being, right? So you're not actually providing the being itself and selling the being itself. You're actually providing this medical care. So you're still practicing right livelihood. That's not business in living beings. And then they go on, they say, can you please outline the 5 traits of wrong livelihood again? Weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. That's what you're looking for. And you'll see that back on the video with the visual aid. Omar is asking, I understand this is off topic, but could you name 1 or 2 arahants in Thailand if there are, and maybe where they frequently live. This isn't something that we share, because if I said this person is an enlightened being or an arahant, that's my view, my opinion, and you need to have a way of independently verifying that. So rather than tell you who is an enlightened being, what I'd rather do is teach you how to determine whether you are enlightened or not, because as you understand what enlightenment is and what enlightenment isn't, you'll be able to see that in other people. So me just telling you who is an enlightened being, it doesn't actually help you cultivate wisdom. You would just have to believe me. And I'm not interested in you believing me. I would like you to cultivate wisdom to know what is enlightenment and how to determine whether you are enlightened or not. Then by doing that, you would then be able to know whether other people are enlightened. But that's not something that you need to necessarily run out and learn right now. If you look in volume 1, chapter 3, at the end of the chapter, I've put about 7 or 8 different questions that you could ask a potential teacher to determine whether they're enlightened or not. Because if you're going to study with an individual, that's when it's helpful to know whether someone's enlightened or not. But just the average person, you don't need to know whether the cashier that you're checking out at the store, whether they're enlightened or not. The only reason why you would be interested to know whether someone is enlightened or not is if you were actually going to study with them. Because if you were going to be interested in getting to enlightenment, you would like to be studying with someone who's either enlightened or very close to it. So that's why in the book, I share these 8 different questions that you could ask a potential teacher so that you'll have confidence of whether or not they're enlightened before you actually study with them. So that's something that I can help you with. There's a person here asking, what is the associated reading for today through next week's class? So the reading actually doesn't start until about the 5th week of the group learning program, where you can start with the preface and the chapter 1. I'll let you know when it's time to do that. But if you would like to start reading some of the content that I'm sharing now, it would be chapter 4 and chapter 5. We kind of penetrate into this because it's the core of the book and the core of the group learning program. So here at the beginning, I penetrate into that. And then we're going to ultimately start at the very beginning of the book. But if you'd like to read, you could do that. Is the reading schedule available online? I'm having trouble finding it. Yeah, if you go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, and you click on online learning, then the very top link is for the group learning program. If you click on the group learning program, you're going to see each day that I'm teaching classes and what chapter I'm teaching, so you'll be able to follow along with the reading schedule. So it's under buddhadailywisdom.com, and then online learning, and then click on the group learning program. Okay, apologize. I have to. Oh, okay, no worries. Okay, you guys are welcome. Pleased to help you guys. Were there more questions here at the temple? Yeah, you had a question?
I'm curious how to differentiate between the true goals and craving, desire, attachment. So for my cases, I've actually got admitted to a really good school, but I was still like looking at like some of like the better schools that I thought it was my true goal, but I actually found out that it's craving, desire, attachment. How can you differentiate it, and how can you have a crystal clear mind getting what you need?
Sure. So the way that you'll know, surefire way, is if you have a craving, desire, attachment, is you're going to see conditioned feelings. If you get really excited or happy if you get this thing, and you'll get sad or frustrated if you don't get it, you know that there's a craving, desire, attachment in the mind. So let me give you this example, and I think this will help you. Let's just say I have a liter of water, and I'm going on this hike at a hiking trail, and I'm driving my car to this hiking trail, and I get out of the car, accidentally leaving the water in the car, and I'm 30 minutes down this hiking trail. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, I forgot my water. And I'm so upset and I'm frustrated, and I hurry back to the car. Maybe I twist my ankle on the way. I sling open the door and I grab the water. I'm like, water. Thank goodness I got my water. But now I can't even go on my hike because I twisted my ankle and I can't even go, right? So this is one scenario. But I could also be out on the trail and realize, I forgot my water. I'm going to be out here for a while. I'm going to be out here for like 6 or 8 hours. Let me turn around and go get my water. And now I calmly make my way back to the car. I get my water, and then I calmly make my way on the trail. So the object is the same. It's the water. the leader of water. The difference is the first person had a craving, desire, attachment. They were longing, yearning for this water, wanting it to be permanent. And their mind was uncomfortable when they realized that it was not with them, because they were craving for it to be permanent, but it was impermanent, right? So what you would like to be able to do is look at each decision that you're making and ensure that, yeah, you're pursuing your needs rather than your wants. Because if you're chasing after your wants, you can only be happy if you get what you want. And that means you're going to be sad or frustrated when you don't get what you want. So you'll need to look within your own mind, because it's not the object itself that determines whether it's a craving, desire, attachment. It's what's going on in your own mind. So if you got really happy, if you got into that college, I think that's what you said, and you would be sad if you didn't, yeah, there's a craving, desire, attachment there. There might be multiple, right? You might be wanting to go to that school. You might have certain friends that are going to that school, and now you want to be with them. Maybe your family really wants you to go to that school and you want to impress them, right? There could be several cravings in there that are actually happening. And that's where the mental discipline section is going to help you, because you're not going to be able to know all of these things without practicing these. That's where the right mindfulness comes in. So I'm going to teach next week how to observe your mind and how to know these things. So just as a shorthand way for you is, if you're experiencing discontentedness, there's a craving in there. But you need to learn how to train your mind to eliminate the craving, so that now you can actually go to the school that you're choosing, that you know would be wise. And if you get in, great, that's wonderful. And if you don't get in, that's fine too. You have plan B, you have plan C, you have plan D, that you can pursue these other options as well. And you can maintain your contentedness and be just as joyful with plan A, with plan B, with plan C, and so forth.
Does that mean the true goals are hidden behind the craving, desire, attachment?
There's a true goal there, and it's getting polluted perhaps with the craving, desire, attachment. So when you get the craving, desire, attachment out of the way, then your true goal can come through, right? So like me growing up, when I first went away to college, I realized that I wanted to help people. That was something I was interested in doing, is helping people. And at the time I decided I was going to be a police officer or a social worker. And then when I looked at it, I was like, they don't make enough money. I don't want to do that. So I went into IT. I went into business because I wanted money. I was craving money. And I went down that whole path for about 7.5 years. And then I was like, I don't like this anymore. And I switched and I opened my own company, right? And I was making all this money in IT and in my own company. Well, eventually I extinguished that craving to have money. And I ultimately got back to what it was that I was truly interested in, which was helping people. And that's what I do now, right? And it's not about the money, because I don't even charge people for what I do. I just help them out of the kindness of my heart. So if you have cravings in your mind, it'll pull you in all these different directions. So I went on this long detour to make my way back around to be able to share these teachings. But in all of that, I was learning, because I wouldn't be able to do all of this IT stuff if I hadn't learned the IT stuff. And if I hadn't done the business stuff, I wouldn't have learned how to be able to help people to understand what I'm doing and be able to share it with people and advertise what it is that I'm doing. So I was learning along the way, but boy, it took me quite a while on that detour. So as long as you're learning and growing and developing wisdom, you're benefiting yourself. But ultimately, if you train your mind with these teachings, you'll be able to get to that ideal life for yourself a lot sooner. Where it took me until I was about 44, 45 to get to my ideal life. And now I'm 50 years old, where I was learning all that time. But gosh, wouldn't it have been great if much earlier I could have gotten to that? So like my son, he's learning these teachings. He started when he was very young. He's 12 years old, 12 and a half years old. He's having a completely different life than I had when I was growing up. I experienced a lot of misery and heartache and difficulties and struggles. He's not having that at all. He's getting annoyed like once every 3 months, because he's not enlightened yet. But he still gets annoyed like once every 3 months. But that's a completely different life than what I had when I was growing up. So if we grow up with these teachings, we have a much better life ahead of us. So it took me 44 years, 45 years to get to understanding these teachings and what I really needed to be doing. And that's why once I was able to get to where I am today, I was interested in sharing it with other people. And I was like, this is what I would like to be doing now. Let me do that, right? But cravings will taint your goals and your objectives. It will pollute it. But when you get that out of the way through the mental training, then what it is that you'd really like to be doing in the world will come shining through, and then you'll be so fulfilled and so satisfied with what you're doing. Okay, let me just check one more time to see if we have any questions. Let's see. Here's one from the Philippines. We have a group in the Philippines that tune in. They're saying, Teacher David, could a person be studying for Right Livelihood without high amounts of enthusiasm? Then once the study is done, the enthusiasm of implementing what one learns increases significantly. Is studying to someday teach less enjoyable than actually teaching, since the wisdom is not yet obtained and cannot be shared with ease? Chris, let's talk about this another time. I'd like to go into detail with this. I know you always write me privately, so we'll talk about that another time. I'll get into more details with you on that. All right, so I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end class here by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest in learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to. We have classes here on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturdays, and you guys can come in through live stream as you travel, or you can watch the recordings. Tomorrow, I'm going to be starting a course called Experiencing the Jhanas and the 4 Stages of Enlightenment. This is Monday through Friday next week. It's going to be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. each day. You guys are welcome to come here for as much or as little of that as you would like. In fact, this Eightfold Path, I'm going to be teaching the entire thing tomorrow morning. So if you guys would like to learn it, starting at 9 a.m., I'm going to be teaching the entire thing from the beginning all the way to the end, because it's part of a different program than this particular program itself. So if you'd like to attend that, as long as you're here at 9 a.m. tomorrow, I'm going to be starting that course tomorrow. And you'll be able to see online all the different topics I'm going to be teaching over the course of those 5 days. So if you'd like to learn that, you're more than welcome to attend. So perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Whatever you choose to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.